Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan does like knowing animals. Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan does like knowing animals.
Hey people, welcome to Knowing Animals. This episode is from our Protecting Animals series, where we speak to animal advocates past and present about the work they're doing for animals. My name's Siobhan O'Sullivan and I do like knowing animals. Well, this episode of Knowing Animals, as always, is brought to you by ASA. ASA is the Australasian Animal Studies Association. The ASA conference is coming up in just a couple of weeks' time. It's going to be in Christchurch, New Zealand. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. If you're not already following ASA on Facebook, I encourage you to get over there really quickly so you can get all the latest news from the 2019 conference. And I also encourage you to think about becoming a member. ASA cannot exist without membership, so it needs you to join them so they can continue working to support animal studies scholars and animal advocates. Well, this episode of Knowing Animals is coming to you from the beautiful island of Koh Samui in Thailand. I'm here as part of the 2019 Koh Samui International Podcast Festival, which features the podcast Little Dum Dum Club. Little Dum Dum Club is one of my favourite podcasts. It is a big part of why I got into podcasting. I started listening to Little Dum Dum Club a long time ago when they started up many years ago. And it was through them that I learnt about a lot of other podcasts that I've come to really enjoy. And also it was through them that I started to think that I too could perhaps have my own podcast. Now that said, Little Dum Dum Club is very different to Knowing Animals, so it's not clear to me that everyone who enjoys Knowing Animals is automatically going to like Little Dum Dum Club. But that's what I'm doing. I'm here at the podcast festival hosted by Little Dum Dum Club. And as I did last year, I've taken the opportunity to use my time here to record an episode of Knowing Animals. Last year, I visited a cat and dog sanctuary on the island of Koh Samui. And this year, I went to the Koh Samui Elephant Sanctuary, or I should say the Samui Elephant Sanctuary. Last year I was a bit reluctant to go to the Elephant Sanctuary because I was a little bit nervous that it could be the kind of place that claims to be ethical but is in actual fact doing things that I think are perhaps not morally appropriate. But I heard a lot of really good reports about it from people who visited last year. And I also spoke to some experts who've done quite a bit of research into elephants and the issues in Thailand. And so this year I decided to visit the sanctuary, and I have to say I was really, really pleased with what I saw there. I think that the issues surrounding elephants and their handlers and loss of habitat and the logging industry, use of elephants for tourism, issues associated with breeding and boredom and just so many other things that are very complicated. But I really felt satisfied that the Samui Elephant Sanctuary are doing the best job they can do given the circumstances. They don't allow elephant rides. They don't allow people to bathe with the elephants. They don't require the elephants to work in any way. So I think they really are trying to do their best to both offer a retirement home to some deserving elephants and also to educate the community. So I did my tour and as I say, I was really satisfied with what I saw. So I asked one of the wonderful guides there, a lovely woman called Gita, if she would allow me to interview her for the podcast. She was really very gracious and she agreed to do the interview. So I returned the next day and we sat down with the elephants in view and we did the interview. If you listen closely, you'll be able to hear the elephants trumpeting in the background. There are two elephants that are best friends who like to hang out together and play, and they were being very playful and noisy at the time. I'm really happy with how the interview came out, and I was just so grateful to have the time there. But it was a little bit of a strange episode. There was, as I say, a lot of elephant noise in the background. Guitar was speaking to me on her break, and just as we were finishing up, a busload of tourists were arriving to start their tour. So I wasn't able to ask the 5 quick questions which I would normally ask at the end of every episode and which I know listeners have come to expect. So what I've decided to do with this special episode is to play you the interview with Guitar from the Sanctuary, and then I've asked 6 of the podcast participants and also hosts if they would share their views on what they saw when they visited the Sanctuary with listeners. So what you're going to hear now is the interview conducted at the Sanctuary. Then I'm going to jump back in and introduce the 6 guests who will be telling you what they saw and what they experienced when they went to the Sanctuary. So enjoy this interview. So Guitar, thank you so much for having me here at the Samui Elephant Sanctuary.
You're welcome.
I was lucky to be on tour with you yesterday and to meet the beautiful elephants and to see the sanctuary. So I just wanted to share my bit of my experience with the listeners. Can you tell us why why this sanctuary was established?
All right. Because in Thailand, it's more than 4,000 elephants who work in captivity. And most of them, they get hurt, abused, they hurt them, they hit them to make them work. So, usually we cannot help all of them. More than 4,000 is quite difficult. But our dream, the dream of Sanctuary, is to educate people and change mentality. And if one day everybody stop hurting them, riding on them, so all of that place, they're going to close and turn to be Sanctuary. And in that day, our dream going to be complete. But the time of waiting, we need to help some of them.
So, can you describe for the listeners what the sanctuary is like?
The sanctuary, that means, we're going to help rescue some elephants that they need help from the neighbor around that area. They see elephant get hurt and they cannot accept anymore. So they're going to call us and we go there with the vet to check. If they need help, we help them here and take care of them, look at their health until they are 100% okay, feel comfortable. We try to make them go to the bigger sanctuary to be like in the nature, same as their home. This is our project, our dream.
So the sanctuary that we're at today has 6 female elephants.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about which elephants live here and what their life was like before they came to the sanctuary?
For example, Kamsan, her name is Kamsan, she's 51 years old. And she was born from Surin province, the northeast of Thailand. And when she was there to work as logging, and her previous owner used a hook to control her ear, and she got an accident. So the hook fell down and cut her ear. And after that, they moved her to Samui here to do trekking from the trekking camp. So rescue her from there because when she was working at a trekking camp, she never get enough. They didn't treat them well. I mean, never have enough food and work like so many hours a day. And if she continue like that, she's gonna die soon. And some of them, she started to work when she was 5 years old until now she has 56. So that means 50 years of working. And they move her to many places. Elephant show from the north of Thailand, logging industry from the south, trekking at some island. And last destination we found her some place, I don't say which place, but some place that she walked on the main road, on the main street. That way is a car, the truck drive. And elephant, they feel the heat under the feet, all right, and they get sweat between the nails only. So in that moment, her feet got infection. And when we talk to her owner, they don't care. They don't care. They said, we said, please stop her working for a while and help her, send the vet and take care of her. And they said, no, if stop working for a while or a month, they lose money. So that's why we need to help her. If we let her like that, in few months, you have to cut the feet. So that is not good for her at all.
One of the things that I learnt about on the tour yesterday was that there are laws against killing an elephant, but if you own an elephant and the elephant dies, you can sell the elephant's parts. So
Yes.
one of the things that I was taught was that some people who want to make money from their elephants try to have them die by an accident. They try to generate an accident. Can you say a little bit about that?
Many owner they do like this. For example, they use elephant to work over 30 years, 40 years, so they got a lot of money. And then after that, when they're getting old, they don't want to take care of them because they have to spend money for fruit. So they want them to die, but they cannot kill them because if they kill them, what's gonna happen? In the law, you cannot kill them. So maybe they don't feed them, hit them every day, and make them work harder, and they can die by themselves slowly. And that is not against the law, right? Because they die by themselves. And if they kill elephant, for example, if I say, oh, this one kill elephant, I go to the police, I can't do anything because we must have the proof. Photos or video, the time that they kill. Even we know that they hit them, they hurt them, but we can't do anything without the proof, right?
So at the sanctuary we're at now, there are 6 elephants, but you have other sanctuaries elsewhere where you don't let tourists go because you're trying to get the animals used to living more of a natural lifestyle. Can you say something about your other sanctuary, the Haven?
The new project, the new project, but not open yet. Gonna open in few months, and that's gonna be 4 times bigger than here, and a lot of tree, a lot of fruits. They play.
We can hear the elephants in the background.
They play together between 2 friends. You see that? Okay, gonna talk about elephant, about sanctuary. And in that place, it's gonna be around. We can put more than 20 elephants there. We want them to be back in the nature. So that's why full of tree. We plant a lot of fruit. Let them that they can find food and swim. They have a little lake there also, and it's no neighbor. So no car, no street. Gonna be very quiet for them, because elephants, same as human. Everybody want to go back home. It's like they go back to their nature again.
Yes, yeah. So one of the nice things about this sanctuary is that it's very ethical. You don't allow things like elephant rides. So can you say something about how you're trying to be an ethical sanctuary? The things that you think make this an ethical sanctuary?
What do you mean? Sorry.
So in some places they advertise things like elephant rides and things like that, but here you don't allow any of that.
No.
Yeah. Why is that important not to let people ride the elephants?
I'm going to tell you like this. The nature of elephant, if you ride direct on the bareback, 1 or 2 people, that is okay. It's not hurt them. But the thing that hurt elephant is the chair on the back. Because the chair on the back of elephant is made from the steel. You know, it's very strong and hard. Only the chair is hurt them already. And you can imagine the 3 people sit on again. So it's hurt them. That's why some of them who work very long, some elephant that work really long with elephant riding, you're going to see the back is very flat. Or some has no hair. So they can live maybe shorter. Because usually elephant can stay until 85 years old. But some of them might live shorter because of that work. Yeah.
So if people are listening to this and they're thinking of coming to Thailand and they want to see elephants, what do you suggest? How can you be ethical and interact with elephants in Thailand?
Try to go to, you like to see elephant and to touch them, to feed them, try to go to the sanctuary. Like in Chiang Mai, like they have Elephant Nature Park in Chiang Mai, big sanctuary, Phuket and Samui here. Do not support the place that they use elephant to work for tourists. You know what I mean? Because they get a lot of money, and so they can never stop because they always get money, they get a lot for that. You know, it's better you go to sanctuary and help them, because sanctuary feed elephant, like, you know, that they eat a lot per day. So we feed them and they don't work at all. They spend the end of their life like a retirement here.
So, of course, it's very expensive to look after elephants.
Yes.
How can people support your work if they're listening and they want to support you?
You can go to our website, samuielephantsanctuary.com. You must be careful, because many places they use the word sanctuary to check the people. You know, you have to go for the ethical one. So, like here, samuielephantsanctuary.org, I think. Yeah, .org.
I can put a link up for
Yes.
people so they can go to the right place.
Website, samuielephantsanctuary.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one.
And so you're raising money to keep the elephants, feed the elephants.
And try to find the land of elephant. That's a very good question, because right now we try to find new land, that bigger land. Like we in the moment we rent them, of course it's too expensive to buy, we cannot buy. But the new sanctuary we can open, the owner, they are very nice to us. They let us to rent in a good price for many years. And in the future, they say that if we have money, we can buy a part or all if we want. And if impossible, if we can buy that land, all elephant gonna stay there forever until the end of
wonderful.
that is our dream.
Yeah. And do you hope to keep working with the elephants for many years?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I cannot leave them since I have to tell you this. If you stay with elephant more than 1 month, you cannot leave them anymore.
Yeah.
When you learn about their life, what they pass, so you can never leave them anymore. Same as me, for
Yeah.
example, I cannot leave them.
Do you have a favorite elephant?
I love all of them, but I have one. Of course, everybody have one favorite, right? Here, my favorite, she is the oldest one, 61 years old. Campion, because she's old, she eats really slow, and her stomach for digestion is not so good. So I love to take care of her and be next to her. But I mean, I love everyone.
Yeah, of course. But you're allowed to have a secret favorite one.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and for coming on the podcast. And I hope that everyone listening visits the website, makes a donation, perhaps one day comes and visits the sanctuary for themselves, but most importantly, that they don't support unethical elephant tourism if they're in Thailand.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kindness. And thank you to everybody who listen right now. I have to tell you that we can rescue elephant or support elephant because of you. We cannot do that by ourselves. It's all of you. And the land that we rent, the new land, because of, your money. All right? So thank you so much for your kind support. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Well, that was the marvellous guitar, one of the carers at Samui Elephant Sanctuary. As I said, I didn't get a chance to ask the 5 quick questions, so I asked some of the other people here for the Koh Samui International Podcast Festival, people who had also visited the sanctuary, to share their thoughts. I asked each person to briefly introduce themselves, but first of all, we're going to hear from
Edwina, who is a podcast fan and a participant, a listener at the festival. We're then going to hear from Nick. Nick Carr is a comedian, a podcaster, a really great guy. So you should check out his podcast as well, if you're into podcasts, which I know you are. Then we hear from Linda. Linda is someone who is a very big supporter of the podcast festival and also the podcast that we're here to feature, which is Little Dum Dum Club. We then move on to Dom, who's another listener and who also had the opportunity to visit the sanctuary. We then hear from Andrea, and Andrea visited the sanctuary last year, and she visited their second little offshoot sanctuary, which is called The Haven, this year. And as you're going to hear, Andrea is trying to raise money to support the work of the sanctuary. So if you'd like to make a donation, and I encourage you to do so, I made quite a significant donation myself while I was here. You can either go directly to the Samui Elephant Sanctuary website, or you can check out Andrea's work as well, and I'll put the links up in the notes. Finally, we hear from Tommy Dasilo, and it was a real thrill to be able to interview Tommy. Tommy is one of the hosts of the Little Dum Dum Club and one of the organisers of the Koh Samui International Podcast Festival, so he's someone that I listen to once a week and have done so for years. So to be able to interview him and to get his thoughts was a real privilege. So please enjoy these interviews. Would you please start by introducing yourself?
Sure. My name's Edwina Williams. I'm a journalist. I'm from...
And you're a comedy lover?
Yes, I'm a comedy lover. Absolutely, yes. Big
So,
podcast fan.
Edwina, you visited the Elephant Sanctuary.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you describe for listeners what you saw there or what your experience was like there?
Okay. Firstly, when we arrived, it was great to come in and sit down, because as soon as you're there waiting, ready to go, you can see the elephants roaming around in their space. And it's not a huge area. It's a couple of acres or whatever, but you can see them all doing what they do in the morning. It's beautiful. And then getting to feed them straight away. I didn't expect
for that to happen. I thought maybe that would happen right at the end, but it happened throughout too. So it was actually, in terms of contact with the elephants, as well as hearing about all their stories, you got to be quite intimate with them and each one the whole way through, which I really enjoyed. Yeah.
And in terms of the space and the layout and that kind of thing, how did you feel about what you saw?
I thought it was, I mean, it's not a huge space for a big wild animal like an elephant, but I thought it was good. It was a good enough space for them. I thought, obviously not inhumane or anything like that. They all kept kind of to their own area, except for a pair that are besties, and they always want to be together and we're calling out for each other. But in terms of, the space, I thought, obviously, when they have more support from more people and more money donated, they can work towards getting a bigger site, which ideally is better for an animal like that. But, they do have enough space for what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm asking everyone who comes on this last section of the podcast to share with listeners one thing that they learnt about elephants, or one fact or piece of information that stood out for them.
Mm-hmm. I guess something that stood out for me was the bond that each individual elephant develops with their specific minder, I guess you could say. There was one elephant that was introduced to the sanctuary for rehabilitation, maybe slightly more recent than the others, and in terms of their in terms of how they trusted human beings, were probably more extreme than the others, and it was quite a violent elephant. So learning about this keeper that slept next to the elephant for weeks, and never left its side, like, obviously it was very moving, but also, just how important it is for them to have that bond, obviously, to develop with that one specific person.
Yeah, absolutely. So, final question: what would your advice be to people coming to a country such as Thailand and wanting to interact with elephants?
Mm-hmm. I'd say definitely do your research. There's two great safe, sanctuaries for elephants that I know of in Koh Samui, run by the same people. I went to Samui Elephant Sanctuary, but I think there's also the Haven sanctuary, which is run by the same people and is smaller and takes 10 people a day in groups of 5 maybe. Definitely do your research. I think it's the one I went to is samuielephantsanctuary.org, I think, and make sure you go to the right ones, because there are still places where you can ride the elephants and where they're not treated kindly. So definitely do your research, because obviously that's what they're saving them from, is that daily repetition, that daily grind of having people ride them, and all the awful treatment that comes with that behind the scenes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Look, thank you so much for joining us on Knowing Animals. I really appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you.
So it's wonderful to be joined by another really special guest at this end of the podcast episode. This time I'm joined by Nick Carr. Welcome, Nick.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Siobhan.
Could you introduce yourself quickly to the listeners?
My name's Nick Carr. I'm a comedian from sunny Brisbane, although I live in Gatton. That's bad. I'm one of the hosts of the Not Backed by Science podcast. And I'm like long walks on the beach and getting caught in the rain.
You're a comedian and a podcaster, so people should check you out. And you're also someone who's visited the Elephant Sanctuary.
I am.
So
I had that pleasure.
Can you tell us what you saw there?
I saw a lot of caring, and I really liked that. Every single one of the trainers, you could tell, were excited to be there. And after hearing them speak, we had... the lady that was showing us around, Gita, she was lovely. She was so great. And you could tell she was really passionate about it herself, really cared about it. She spoke to the elephants. I really liked that. She was quite funny. She's obviously good at her job. But just hearing them talk about the level of sacrifice they have for that job blew me away. Like, it was incredible. Like, when they talk about how the one of the trainers, one of the horses, Jesus, one of the elephants was so traumatized that it could not cope without its trainer being more than out of eye line. So was it 4 meters away or something? Because it had one of its eyes had gotten literally beaten out of its head. And so they said that this guy, like, that was his whole life, and he didn't want to leave the elephant. When the elephant would have like sort of micro sleeps for 5 or 10 minutes standing up, he'd sleep there, stand there with it that whole time, holding its trunk. Couldn't even go to the 7-Eleven, but he seemed very happy with that. So much caring.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And one of the things I learned was that elephants only sleep for 4 hours. So that's a lot of fill-in time between.
That's it. That's a lot. And like, I'm a person who doesn't get much sleep as it is, but like 4 hours a night forever. Oh, that's brutal. Especially when they have to sleep close to like, they're not even like just on that 4 hours. They just go somewhere else and have their own space and get to sit and watch TV. They literally sleep in a small room with the door and the window open so the elephant can still see them. It's insane.
So I'm asking everyone who comes on to, say, share a fact or a piece of information they learned at the sanctuary on the tour that they think listeners might be interested in.
One of the other things I liked was that they were saying, what was it I had in my head a second ago and I've just lost it. Jeez, you said I'm professional. I'm not at all professional.
We're thinking facts, amazing things.
Yeah.
So we've got a 4 hours.
What's the other thing I really liked about it? That was it. So, yeah, it kind of ties in what I was saying before. Because of the sacrifice of their trainers, every single one of them that we met, Gita said, now give them a round of applause to say thank you. And I was like, this absolutely isn't enough. But the trainers themselves seem really... I keep saying trainers. I don't know, carers. It's probably more... the carers seem to really enjoy that appreciation as well.
Yeah.
I know, I suppose the thing I learnt there was just a greater appreciation for sacrifice and caring. I thought it was amazing.
Absolutely,
I thought it was really good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for listeners who are perhaps visiting somewhere like Thailand and want to interact with elephants but want to be ethical?
I think that those sanctuaries are the way to go, 100%, because they're by no means cheap. And I can see where the money's going there. Like, I can see, because they've got a project, they want to open up a bigger enclosure at the back so that the elephants are off the road, because they had quite a few stories too of the elephants wandering on the roads and in a situation they shouldn't have been in. So it'd be good to give them more freedom in that. I think those sanctuaries were great. I was a bit worried going in there. I was like, okay, yeah, this is a sanctuary, but is this still a privileged person coming in gawking at the elephants? Is this still kind of the same thing, but I'm also donating money so I get to feel good about it? But I really don't think that's it. I really did feel good about it. Like, I felt like they want to show us the work they're doing, and it seemed that the elephants had a good time. They didn't seem... At no point did I see the elephants stress out or anything. They were getting fed. They were responding well to the feeding and the patting. I think overall it was a positive experience. I really think going to those sanctuaries, if you're going to do it, is the way to do it. Yeah. I wouldn't do it any other way.
Look, I agree. I actually didn't go last year because I was nervous for exact reason. But a lot of people assured me, including people I know who've done a lot of research in the field. And I went and I was satisfied that I think they really are trying to do the best they can under difficult circumstance.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, they've got an ex-Neighbours cast member doing the intro video, so...
Is that who that was?
Yeah, it was the old guy I was like, I know him, who was it? Matt Stewart pointed out it's the old mate that used to run the pub in Neighbours.
Oh, really?
Used to run the bar.
Oh, goodness, that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was great.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Siobhan. Cheers.
We're pleased to be joined by Linda. Linda, can you give us your full name and tell us what you're doing here at Koh Samui?
Sure. My name is Linda Moulton. I'm from the States originally, New York, Florida, and I'm here for the 2019 Koh Samui International Podcast Festival. I actually live and work, though, in a town in central Thailand, so about 8 or 9 hours to the north of here, but...
So you're almost a local.
Almost. No.
So can you tell listeners what the sanctuary was like for you?
I actually went to the sanctuary a couple different times, and I also went to Haven. First time I went, it had just opened, so it wasn't as built up as it is now, and they were still in the process of, figuring everything out. It's very well run. It's really cool. It's like you go up into the mountains, and I don't want to say it has a almost Jurassic Park type feeling, but you walk up this hill and then turn a corner and there's an elephant. And then Haven is it's still in the process of their whole opening, but it's very charming. It's on this little farm. The family that kind of runs the whole Samui Elephant Project still lives on that property, and that one is a little bit more rehab focused. So they've got basically elephants that are still in quarantine that they're still slowly introducing to the herd. But I still found it as charming as possible.
Wonderful. And can you share with listeners something that you learnt about elephants, a standout piece of information or fact?
It's going to sound really silly, but I was amazed at how long their lifespan is. And one thing that the guides there will always say is they're basically the same age as people. And it's just amazing, and it's just heartbreaking when you meet elephants like Cartoon or Srinin or Sudarat, who are in their 60s, and they're telling stories about how they were abused, and it's just kind of like it's like my mom or my grandma almost, and it sounds silly, but yeah, the lifespan definitely.
Yeah, no, not at all. And it's really sad to think that for animals that find themselves in a situation of abuse or suffering, that it does go on for decades. I mean,
it's awful. And they talked about the logging industry in Thailand, and and of course, once they outlawed that, people still tried to make money off the elephants, and it's just, it just gives me the chills thinking about it.
Well, Linda, what would your advice be to people coming to Thailand who want to interact with elephants but be ethical?
First off, don't expect to see elephants almost immediately. My best advice is, if you see elephants like on the street, it's not a good sign. They're not in a good place. Just keep that in your mind. Do your research. I'm not sure if they talked about elephant begging when you were there, but the other thing they brought up at the sanctuary is elephants are essentially extinct in the wild in Thailand. So every elephant that you see is domesticated. And that was actually something that I brought up with my father when he came to Samui in April. Was he's a wildlife ecologist by trade and training, and he thought that he was going to see elephants in the wild, and even he was amazed when he went to the sanctuary.
Yeah, so do your research, and if you see an elephant by the side of the road, chances are that elephant is having a bad life, and don't support it financially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Linda. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm here with another guest now. I'm joined by Dom. Dom, could you introduce yourself properly to the listeners?
Yeah, hi, my name's Dom. I'm from Geelong in Australia, here on a nice little trip to Thailand, yeah.
Yeah, and you're a podcast and comedy fan?
Absolutely, yeah. I like to attend a lot of the shows, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So, Dom, you visited the sanctuary. Could you tell listeners what it was like for you, what you saw there?
Yeah, it was a really, I think, humbling experience, actually, going to see the elephants there, to see, I guess, these creatures, these beautiful animals that have been in a really unnatural environment for, 40, 50 years in some cases, some of these animals, and to see them in an environment where they're safe and they're relatively happy and comfortable and living the best life that they possibly can. It was really a really beautiful time. I really enjoyed that as an experience, yeah.
Yeah, I found it really moving as well.
Yeah.
Dom, can you share with listeners a standout thing that you learnt during the visit?
Yeah, I think the real thing I took away was, look, we all know that animals have been treated really badly, but to actually hear some of the stories of what these particular elephants have gone through, I mean, we're talking getting put on chains that are a metre or less long when they have to stand all day, being directed, people shooting slingshots at them to make them turn around corners or to make them keep going forward, or I think the worst thing I heard, it's a torture device, was they're using long hooks to grab the elephants behind the ears in order to make them turn around when they're not, behaving as they want them to. It's just the scale of the torture and the treatment that these elephants have gone through. It's really eye-opening and depressing. It's hard to know, but it's important, I think, that we learn about it.
We could see on quite a few of the elephants that there were holes in their ears, and that is from the hook.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And lots of scars on their backs and their head as well, like from being shot at with slingshots or rocks or whatever it is that they're actually using against them. It's there to see, yeah.
It was really emotional, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, given all that, Dom, what advice would you have for people visiting Thailand who'd like to interact with elephants but do it in an ethical way?
I mean, number one, please do not ride the elephants. I think that can't be stressed enough. I think that's the most important thing. That's Samui. There's a couple of those organisations that are doing the right thing, that are actually sanctuaries. There's a sanctuary, the Haven, and I think one other place that are doing really good work for the elephants, and I think it's important to visit and support those sort of organisations, because the more people that actually disregard the riding and go to the sanctuaries are the ones that are going to, in the long run, help out the elephants and really make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. Dom, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
So I'm here with one of our other fabulous Koh Samui International Podcast Festival participants. Would you start by introducing yourself?
How do you do, Siobhan? My name is Andrea.
Andrea, and you're a podcast enthusiast?
Indeed I am. I spend way too many hours with earbuds in my ears, but I love it.
Now, you're also one of the people who visited the elephants this year at least. Can you tell listeners what you saw?
Absolutely, I would love to share that. So I actually went to the sanctuary last year and the Haven this year, exactly 12 months to the day, which was a coincidence, but a very happy one. Last year was my first experience in visiting elephants, and it was quite moving, quite emotional, and made me sit up and take notice about what's going on here and other places in terms of conservation of these beautiful animals.
Yeah. And so could you describe for listeners what you saw, say what the layout and the setup is at the sanctuary, for example?
Yeah, so the sanctuary is it's quite vast. It seems to be quite a large piece of land. It seems to be cleared in some sections and still maintains its natural vegetation in others. There are some minimal enclosures for the elephants there, but they seem to have lots of space to wander around and for people to interact with them.
So there's only about 6 elephants there, which is nice given that they're large animals and the amount of space available. Can you tell us something in particular that stands out for you as something that you learnt or a fact that was imparted to you on your visit?
Yeah. Look, I learnt a lot in those 2 visits, so much, but I think something that was really, really interesting to me was the fact that the gentleman who runs the sanctuary, his father actually runs the Haven. And they have both been involved in the elephant industry. When I say the elephant industry, they've provided or leased out elephants in the past for work, but they've come to realise that they don't want to do that anymore. And they've come to understand that these animals in particular need to be looked after, that they have been mistreated in the past, and that they are both on a serious quest to change that. And even though that's more about the people behind the project than the elephants, I just found that really interesting. And for me, it was very encouraging in that I think, well, if you've got people of that significant involvement with that mindset, that we are actually going to see change. And that excited me about it, and that's what made me want to help them.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that you are organising some fundraising or some assistance for the elephants. Can you tell us what it is you're doing?
Yeah, so we have a fundraising platform. It's called The Best Elephant Ride You'll Never Have. And we're asking people to donate $30 Australian because that's about how much it costs to go on an elephant trek in Thailand. So we're inviting people to forward that $30 to our fundraising campaign rather than go and ride an elephant. And we send half to the sanctuary and half to the haven.
Oh, wonderful. And what's the address that people can go to find...
Look, I actually have somebody else looking after that for me. Forgive me, I'm a bit behind the times. But look, I'm sure that if you Google it or look for it, you will find it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And have you raised much so far?
We haven't made... We've only just started. We're about $300 in.
Oh, wonderful.
And we're happy with that.
Oh, good. That's
Yeah.
a great start.
Yeah.
So, final question. What's your advice to people who want to interact with elephants, say, for example, in Thailand, but want to do it ethically?
Absolutely make your way to the Koh Samui Elephant Sanctuary or the Koh Samui Elephant Haven, but please be careful because there is another business running a similar experience who are offering bathing with the elephants and other things, and they're actually not about conservation. They're still living off the elephants. So just be careful when you do make that booking or you do that little bit of research on TripAdvisor. Make sure that you're going to the right one.
Yeah.
And when you do get there, soak it in. It's a very moving, emotional experience, and it's something that you'll never forget.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put a link to the Samui Elephant Sanctuary website up on the notes for this episode. And I
Great.
can also put a link to your fundraising drive as well.
Great. I'll get Beck to help us with that. Fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, my next guest is a very exciting guest. He's one of the hosts of the podcast festival that I'm here visiting Thailand as part of. So, Tommy, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, my name is Tommy Dassilo. I am one of the hosts of the Little Dum Dum Club podcast. This is the third year that we've organised the Koh Samui International Podcast Festival, where we do 5 days of live comedy shows on the beach, and listeners from all over the world kind of come over and hang out. We've got about 150 people here this year. So, yeah, we organise stuff at night for people to do, shows to come and watch, and then they're free to just do what they want during the day. So, yeah, people have been doing cooking classes and hiring jet skis and going to elephant sanctuaries.
Elephant sanctuaries. Now, you're one of the people that visited Elephant Sanctuary. I believe you went yesterday.
We went yesterday, yeah. We've never been before, I think, because every year we end up getting so busy with doing all the podcast stuff, setting up the shows and everything, that we've never gotten the time to go. But last year a group of listeners went and we heard such amazing things about it that this year we went, we've got to make sure we definitely go. So, yeah, we booked it in well in advance before we got here. And, yeah, most of the comedians that are here for it all went along. My parents are here as part of the festival, so they came with us as well, and it was great. It was really, really great.
Yeah. So can you describe for listeners what you saw, what it was about?
Yeah, so you get a really nice introduction where you kind of talked through the history of the sanctuary and how it all got set up, and then you get a little demonstration of how to properly feed the elephants and how to make sure that you don't get bashed by the trunk by not sneaking up on them and spooking them. So then, yeah, we got divvied into groups. We each got a big bag of bananas. And then you just basically do a lap around the sanctuary and your guide takes you to each elephant and gives you a bit of the backstory of how the elephants wound up there, what their lives were like before they got there. And yeah, it's really interesting because it is pretty brutal. Like all the stories that you hear, it's such a nice environment. It's so nice to interact with the elephants. It's beautiful out there. But then you're hearing these incredibly depressing stories that do have a happy ending because the elephants are better now. But it is, I kind of think that's the point, that you are meant to feel very conflicted at the end of it. And it is beyond just having a nice experience. You're meant to kind of really walk away and think a bit more deeply about it and get a bit more, active about the way that you interact with wildlife and the world and everything.
Yeah, it worked on me. I found myself in tears. The old girl was... So what's one thing you learned or a stand-up fact that you learned that you can share with listeners?
We were mostly pretty taken by because each elephant has what's the word? A carer or a specific trainer, trainer.
Well, I think there's a particular Thai word, but I think handler's fine.
Handler, yeah. So they kind of, it's one-on-one with like one person per elephant that the elephant then grows to trust and has a real bond with. And just the fact that these guys give up their entire lives to be there in the sanctuary. Like some of them, the elephants are have been so abused that like this is the first, person that they've ever trusted. That I think there's one guy that like if he goes to the toilet, like the elephant kind of follows him and starts to freak out that you can't see him. They all sleep there on site in view of where the elephants sleep. There's one guy that has to sleep. I think it's the same toilet guy. Like has to sleep kind of outside so that his elephant can see him at all times, and they don't. That's their whole life. Like they don't have. They don't go. They can't go out. They can't have girlfriends. They live in this sanctuary 24/7, non-stop. And I guess they're all from villages where they grew up around elephants, so it's probably, I guess they would have a happy life because they have this deep bond with the elephants. But it just really makes you think about your own existence and how materialistic you are, because we all walk away from that going, wow, that's huge. Like I could never do that. Like I could never commit to doing something like that. But I guess these guys wouldn't have even given it a second thought. Like it's just instinct to them.
And it's interesting because as the logging industry declines and the elephants lose their jobs, their handlers are also losing their jobs. So it's a very it's a sad cycle. They're rising and falling their chances together.
Yeah, it is an interesting one where, not that I think that it justifies animals being abused, but you sort of go, you're in a third world country and the people running the things that are, the elephant rides or whatever, it's like, sure, it's very, very dodgy, but then if that starts to fail, well then the side effect of that is that a person living in a third world country is out of a job and can't support their family. So, not to say that means that unethical things, should be happening, but you do get into a position then where it's like there is a roll-on effect of like, right. It's just a lot to think about. It's a lot to kind of take on mentally. Like
it is, and that's why I think though the sanctuary is a good opportunity because these handlers can do something ethical and also make money. And so I think it's about perhaps directing money to people who are trying to do things a better way. Yeah, and it's it wasn't cheap, especially contextually for other stuff in Thailand. It's not cheap to go to, but you feel, so maybe another activity coming up that costs that much, you'd go, Whereas with that, you know directly where it's going to, and you can see directly where it's going to. So it's very easy to just go, well, what am I doing with my money? Exactly. Like, help these elephants. Like it's when you can see that it is all directly going to a very good thing, it makes it just a lot easier to rationalise and go. Well, Tommy, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. And definitely go check out do the research and go to one of the ethical sanctuaries if you're ever in Thailand. It was incredible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for this special issue of Knowing Animals coming to you from the 2019 International Koh Samui Podcasting Festival. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter at knowing_animals, or you can follow me at SO_S. You can also follow us on Facebook at Knowing Animals, or you can follow me at Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram at Knowing Animals. Finally, don't forget to leave a review on iTunes. Reviews make it easier for other people to find us. I'm Siobhan O'Sullivan, and I do like knowing animals.